I don't know if it can get any better than this. To be together with a group of field walkers talking about the very thing that we love, and that's archaeology, prehistory, and some of the oldies that were scouting and living and just getting through life millennia ago. Tonight, what we're doing is continuing with mentoring, and it's something that I hope a lot of you will either orchestrate or simply be a part of. It stretches you, it gets us out of our box, it gives us energy to want to get back into the fields, and then we learn. And oftentimes we come up with answers by a consensus of opinion, and especially if you have 2 or 3 or 4 lifetime field walkers. And you'll get some that have only been in there for a few years, and some that have been there for a lot of years, and some of us that are still out there and still plowing furrows and walking. So come on in and join us for a little bit this evening. We're going to take a look at just some basic archaeology that's been coming mostly out of one field, and I can say at this point comfortably, just in blades alone, I'm way past 500 now, just this year alone, pushing toward 1,000. And I jokingly said in other videos, thanks to all of you who walked over it, I got to pick up all those artifacts, and I'm loving every minute of it. So what we're doing right now, we're just looking at stuff and enjoying it. And I'd like to just start over here with Chris, and we'll talk. And Deneen, I want to get your opinion on some things. And let's just see what we got. So what do you got there, Chris?
Well, this is a very unusual, I want to say it's more sandstone-like, but it's got some interesting grooves throughout it. So my first thought is maybe that it was used as an abrader.
Meaning what?
That they would use whether other rocks, flint, to sharpen or form into whatever tool they needed.
Okay. Let's see what you, Deneen, have you ever picked up or found anything like this in the field when you're out walking?
I have, yeah, I have. And considering the material it's made out of, like a sandstone-ish material, that was common to use for abraders because it did a good job of sharpening tools they needed. I would definitely give this a second look too if I found it, because that's what it looks like to me.
Good. And you're both wrong. No, I'm kidding you. Spot on. It is an abrader stone, and what's unusual about it is all the places where they've been running sticks or antler or bone for whatever reason. Now, were it like a celt or an axe, they might be running it sideways like this. But if you notice, in the bottom of each one of these, it's rounded. It's not coming together at an acute angle. Okay? It's rounded. It's rounded. This is a cool find, and it's really the only thing like this I've ever found. Now, the same year, I also found this abrader snapped in half, but this is semi-polished and not necessarily by them, but the years of being in the ground. But once again, you can see how it's rounded and where they were working for whatever reason, whatever tool they had, a much wider girth than these. But these are tremendous artifacts. And always, you guys, I would say to you, when I found both, they were dirty. And I hung on to this one because it was just weird. Yeah. It was weird. It felt weird. But my motto is, when you're collecting, collect. You can look at it later, right? And then this one was just the groove. That's all it was showing, was the groove. But you know what? If I had been thinking flint, notch point, I'd have never seen it. Sure. And this goes back to my thinking, my ideas and philosophies, is you got to talk to your brain, because if you don't, your brain's going to tell you what to do. And I think you need to be smarter than your brain, and you need to tell it, I want to find pottery. And some of you have been with me in the field when I said hammerstone, or preform. Here's one, got one. But everything in your brain starts to focus and things start happening with you. Okay, this is good, you guys. I wanted to just kind of break the ice tonight with some abraders. Chris, why don't you pick up a couple other things? Okay. see what you got. Thank you. I'm so glad you got that one.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we've got a really nice gray Coshocton flint, high quality. I mean, really nice.
Okay.
It, not sure. It looks. I mean, my first thought was looking at it to see if it has any blades taken off. If it was a core.
Okay, time's up.
Okay.
No.
And I think actually that's what I'm going to go with. This is part of the core.
All right. All right. Now, when you're brainstorming, which I encourage all of you to do when you get friends together like that and you're safe and you care about each other, there's no wrong answer when you're brainstorming. You're considering all the possibilities. And that's what we're doing right now. You know, we're taking our years of walking and trying to think through any possibility that we got. And this is, I'm being ornery because I know what that is. And actually, the neat thing is some of the root behind this is what you guys have been asking me for clarity on something. So this would be like the beginning of preform, blank. This would be a blank, and from here they would begin to snap it and put shape on it. And so these are giant thinning flakes.
Gotcha.
And you got those right, Chris. They were huge thinning flakes. But there's no distinct platform anywhere on this. And when we look at it, what they're doing is they're taking a lenticular, they're thinning down the bulge in the middle. And but with a blank, it's just crude, just struck a few times, and then this will eventually work itself down into a nice thin Adena type blade. So to all you people who've been saying, hey, we want preforms, talk about preforms, they all started from a blank. So good job. Okay, what else you got?
It looks like.
And while he's looking, let me just add and say that you got to be curious when you get on a site and you're finding flakes of flint. And for me, when I'm finding 200 or 300 flakes, I know I'm on a pretty decent site in my county. But if you get away from the sources, get away from the flint pits like Norwalk or Huron County or Ashland County or Crawford, you're not going to get into the volume of chips. But you got to learn to recognize what's going on. Do I need to slow down? Do I have a camp? Do I have a village? And go from there. But once you are convinced that you've got a little village site, you got to turn stuff over. So this was one of those ones that was just laying in the field, and I'm like, man, I'm going to turn everything over because I know I got a village right here.
We got sandstone. First of all, it's a rock, and it's got 2 purposely made notches. A lot of people call these net sinkers, but I think the consensus is that they were used for probably something different because of their weight. Definitely some polish on the ends. So, nice artifact.
Deneen, let me ask, have you ever found anything like this when you've been field walking?
I don't think I have.
And
I don't think I have.
and really only recently in the last 5 to 10 years have I started finding these and picking them up. But it's because now I'm taking my time, I'm poking, I'm picking, I'm turning things over like crazy. So is there anything you want to add to or take away from or share with us?
I agree that it does look like these were notches put in the side for maybe some type of binding.
Mm-hmm.
What it would be used for, I don't know, but it could be for binding would hold better with a notched stone like this than an unnotched stone. I do feel some polishing, and I think you can even see it right here. There's like a little change in the color right here on this side.
I can see that from
Right
here.
here.
Yeah.
But what, yeah, it's, I think on this side too, there's some polishing right here. And there's a little bit of discoloration right there. But I would definitely give this a second look if I found it
Okay, good.
while walking, just because of the notches on that.
Absolutely.
On the side.
Catches your eye.
Yeah.
Oops.
Now, for me, in this area, we also find pottery, and on the ancient village where I'm currently digging, where there's pottery, there's a lot of rocks like this that are kind of pancaked and either ovate or circular, or basically all the locals down there call them river biscuits. I don't know what you guys call them, but my friends up north, like me, we find these in common in fire pits when there's a lot of pottery, but not necessarily notched. Now, the notches, the jury's still out on these. And what I want to say to all you folks that are watching is, you don't have to know what something is to be able to recognize it as an artifact. And for that reason, it's gone home with me, or for that reason, it's going to get a site number. And then as I get together with more friends, we'll pick each other's brains. Now, I've been doing that for a while on these. And earlier in the Archaeological Society of Ohio, one of the journals, they covered a site that was about 1,000 feet up from the Tuscarawas River, and over 100 of these were found up there. So if you're doing anchors, why would you have it that far away from the water and drag your nets up, or were they making up and then dragging it all the way down? I don't know, but the caution that I'm putting out there to all of you is, don't be quick to judge, because if I say, oh, this is an anchor, you're going to be thinking anchor. It's going to be in your head. You can't. It's like a stupid song that you heard on the radio, and you try all day long to get rid of it. So be real cautious and careful before you say this is this or that is that. The diagnostic information on this happens to be the notches, and then with a hand lens, you can even see a little bit of wear on the rock itself. Not so much on this side, but we have some here.
Correct.
And there's some polish grinding areas on this rock. Okay, good. Well done, Chris. Anything else? Grab.
Sure.
Go for it.
All right. All right. So we got a nice piece of Nelly flint. You can see on one of the lateral sides the flaking. Looks to me definitely some damage. So I would say that it's definitely was at one time a larger piece, but that's a nice work set.
All right. Well, and you've recognized enough to know that that needs to go home with you,
Absolutely.
right? All right. Well, Denise, you want to add anything to this?
No. Beautiful Nelly shirt. Flint. I agree. This edge, the work. This was the tool part. And this edge looks like a tool part too. Other than that, I mean, I didn't. I think it's difficult to find a bulb of percussion on this.
Yeah, it
I
is.
think it's gone.
Yeah, I agree.
But I agree with Chris that this edge wasn't definitely part of a tool at some point,
Okay.
and perhaps this here, right, this end here too.
Okay.
I would say.
Well, so one of the things when I begin to critique something like that, question I ask myself, is it a biface or a uniface tool? Because I'll look at it differently. If it's a uniface, I know that all the work is being done on one side, and that leans strongly into some type of a knife or a scraping tool or engraver. But then if it's a biface, now we're looking at, it could be a notched point or just some type of a knife. And you're right, both of you. When we look at this, and this is where you have your hand lens, we're looking for field damage, or are we looking for prehistoric damage? I see field damage right here. You can see a difference in the coloration,
Yes.
and it's pretty obvious. But when I look over here, this side is full of patina that matches the patina here. So we actually have the prehistoric piece right here. Looking up here, a little bit of damage right here and here. But if we look at the geometry, the piece is starting to come around like this. Now, we find that I've not found anybody that has a name for these that satisfies me. So I turn it sideways and I look at it. I have one side here, I have one side here, and I have a flat side here. So 1, 2, 3. I call these large triangular knives. and this is the way they had it. So I think this was in their hand, and they were sawing or cutting with it. Now, of course, we'll never be able to say this was definitely that, but we can get a pretty good idea, a good consensus of what's going on. We look at the knife. It's not being used as a scraper. There's no concave areas or convex areas on it. It's been sharpened. It's straight as a bullet. And I think we have a type of knife like that. Okay, good. How about this guy? This was, let me start on this side of the classroom and see what.
Oh, this is beautiful flint.
It is.
Beautiful.
It is.
I'm gonna go with. It just pops into my head that this is a preform, a small preform.
All right, that's a good possibility.
Just looks like they were shaping it.
Put your hand on it and squeeze it. Does it feel a little bit punky?
It does. It's chunky. It's
Yeah.
chunky. And
Those are our words, punky and chunky.
I mean, there's just that big old knot right here. They may have been working to get that thin down here. Some thinning flakes on the back. I'm going to go with a small preform.
Small preform. All right. Mr. Chris, what do you think?
Personally, yeah, you're right. Absolutely gorgeous flint.
And while you're looking, in Coshocton County, they have an outcrop, actually more than one place. I was surprised to know this. But Van Port, which is the geologic name for Flint Ridge, coming out of the Newark area, where this stuff is surfaced, coming up and where the prehistoric people dug. One flint pit that I looked at is probably 30 feet across and at least 15 feet deep. It's big. Reminds me of the flint pits down at Flint Ridge. So it is definitely a classic example of Flint Ridge flint that's coming out of Coshocton County. Your turn.
All right, no, I agree with Deneen. I think you can see the thinning flakes on it. There's actually some nice secondary flaking down here. So I think it's still a preform, but they might have actually started using it as a tool down here at the end.
All right.
But yeah.
So again, when I pick up something like this, and I did, and it was dirty, and I just, in my hand, it had that plump, punky feeling, and I'm like, this has possibilities. So I washed him up, and I'm looking at this guy, and definitely a biface piece, right? It's been worked on both sides. So that's going to direct my thinking on this one, and I'm thinking, this is really fat. And when I look at this, these are concussions all along here. And it just feels like one of these little hammerstones that they had in their hand when they're working. Like that.
Yeah.
Now, you were correct, Chris. They were working on this side, and this is another tool. This is a complete tool because as we look at this, both sides of it, we see that this is the beginning and the end of this particular tool. A multi-type tool, which is not uncommon at all. And but this really did it for me. This is kind of a bulbous area, and you can feel the chunkiness, and it's got a lot of concussions all along here. And I just think if I'm working on a flint piece, and I've got my napping tool, and I'm napping, but I got to knock a hunk off. I got this in my hand, set that down, whack. Then knock. We're learning. We are constantly learning as we go. And this is hats off to every one of you who have napped at least once in your lifetime. But to those of you who still have both eyeballs and your fingers are still on your hands and you haven't slaughtered yourself from napping, thank you, because you are teaching us so much about the prehistoric people. Let's do a few more pieces, and then we'll kind of roll it up for this evening. Let me jump over here for a second and talk, and then we'll close over here. Okay, this is not to be crazy or silly or anything like this, but it's so important that we all learn to communicate. And if we're going to communicate, we've got to have the same language. And if I say to you, Chris, or if I say to you, Deneen, check out the lateral corners. You got to know what I'm saying, because we may be on email, we may be messaging, we may be on a cell phone. Deneen says, man, I'm in a new field and I'm finding these things, and they look like end scrapers, but they're all straight at the distal end. I know what she's talking about. So what I've done is I've thrown some things together on uniface, which are made out of flakes. And but these are some things that you need to know. We've talked about it once before, but this is good to get it back in your brain. And you'll hear us talking tonight about the bulb or the cone of percussion. And when you see it, you can see the little bulb right here. Sometimes they call it a cone. And this is the initial place where they struck the block of flint and they drove the flake off or the blade off, okay? So the cone or the bulb of concussion or percussion right here. And then we have our blade. So we have the proximal, which is the end that's right here beside me. And then we have our distal end. It's a distance away. Then you have your two lateral sides. And that's enough to get us talking. We can at least begin to communicate and get things going. But there's more to it than that. There's the other side. Same piece, other side. The ventral side is flat. The dorsal side, okay, has the ridges. And this one, these are called an eris like that. And sometimes they fork, sometimes they're singular, sometimes they're here, sometimes they're up here. But things that I look for is diagnostic that let me know that we're dealing with an artifact or one that's been used, or it's been specifically used and tossed. So I start everything like a car. Key goes in the ignition before you do anything. And when you're working with uniface pieces, you start 100% of the time at the cone or the bulb of percussion. Then you look at the distal end out here. And that's where you look for work. And that's just the way they did it. They either handheld or they hafted it or socketed it. And out here's the tool. Now, sometimes you'll find other tools worked in it, like a side scraper or little engravers. In this case, I put a burin on here. And burins usually created a right angle. Like some people call them steps in the flint. Maybe a type of a wedging tool where you can take it and push it and pop something off like that. So we have our ridge or our eris. We have a thinning flake coming off the base. And then we have the dorsal and ventral. Ventral is the bottom. I always think of a fish. The ventral side is where they go to the bathroom and where their tummy is. And then the dorsal fin. And so up here, the fin would be the ridges, okay? So keeping this in mind, it's really helpful. I want to add to this because we think we have a new tool type, and we're calling it an overshot. And with the overshot, the energy went down and it rolled just a tiny bit and created a lip right here. And you're going to hear more about it. You're going to see more of this on our film as we go down the road. But one of the things that's going to help you is when you look at your overshot, you want to go to the lateral, distal corners. So I would say to Deneen or Chris, I'd say, Chris, talk to me about your lateral corner, your distal corner. Is there any evidence of them being used? And there is, because this part of the blade is not just paper thin, it's beyond razor blade thin. And if I take this and push like this on something, this is going to snap, it's going to break, a chunk's going to come out immediately. But where this lip is, it rolls over and it's almost unbreakable. And what you'll find with this new tool type is almost 100% of the time, they're creating new tools right down here by it, on top of it, making scrapers and gravers on it. And so this is one area where you'll find on your uniface blades where stuff's going on. The other one is back up here where the cone is. And this is another area where it's really strong. And commonly when you find these, look real carefully around the bulb or the cone and you'll see retouch coming down one or both sides like that. Do we know what they were doing? No, but when you look at the type of retouch, it's not random. It's very methodically done. So you could say, well, maybe they were hafting. Well, if they did, it's sharp, so it's going to cut up whatever they're putting it in. Maybe they have another tool type that we haven't defined yet. We can call it a multiple tool type, okay? So I just wanted to get this into your head. Let's go over and we'll kind of wrap it up. By the way, thanks for coming. And I think you guys, if you don't mind, I'm just going to pick up a couple of things real quick. This bag is full of stuff. You can't see it from where you're at, but these are all blades. But when you look at them, they're all blades of the same color of Coshocton flint. It's that beautiful high gloss gray. And they came from, geez, within a 10-yard circle of each other. And I'm thinking, and when I look at the base of these puppies, well, let me get this guy. No, I'm going to have to dump them out and get one of them out of here. If you look at the bulb or the cone, there's a hunk of flint right there. And that's actually part of the platform that came off the core. And these are very different. We're looking at a uniface blade, but the cone is a little bit different. It's not rounded where they popped and knocked it off. This, again, is part of a core platform, and they're knocking it. And as they keep knocking these blades off, the core is going to get smaller and smaller this way. And eventually, each time they hit it and a blade comes off, the blades are turning in, and they won't be able to remove any more blades. So these are all the same color. They're all similar. And I can't wait because this winter I'm going to see if any of them fit together for a possible cone. A couple last things, we'll close. This is just looks like Nelly. In my area, some of the older people cultures use this material. And so right away I can see the cone, bulb of percussion right up here. Polar opposite end is right up here. If I flip him over, I can see work all along the side, like a side scraper, okay? And I also see a type of engraver on the end, and I see another working edge right here. Look at the thinning flakes coming off the base, coming off the bulb. Beautiful thinners like that. And in my area, that's pretty indicative of the paleo culture. We're really comfortable with that. So what could have been just a blade, a piece of Nelly chert in your field, turned out to be a beautiful, whole, complete paleo uniface blade. And the last one, this just looks like a gorgeous piece of kind of that grayish, whitish flint that's coming out of Coshocton. But in reality, this is Van Port. It's a type of Flint Ridge flint. And when I looked at big old cone right here of percussion, polar opposite end is up here. And I looked at it, I'm like, oh, I got an overshot. Then I'm like, wait a minute, this is going completely over. And I used my hand lens and looked, and not only does it go over, but they actually pop. Be sure to tell everybody to turn off their cell phones before you start speaking. Oh, heck. Anyway, this is, and you can fill it real quick. And this is gorgeous. They just thinned it, they polished it in a type of tool. I don't know what they were using it for, but I noticed that this year on this site in particular, that where we had a few overshots, some of them will really put an edge on it. So tonight, I thank both of you guys coming for a round of mentoring. You keep me sharp. And I want to remind all of you, if you really want to learn something, teach it. Thanks for coming with us.